welcome back to the Alex Stone Show. I am your host, Alex Stone. I am on a mission to spread the light of the gospel into every aspect of life, and yes, I did say every, including the things that most Christians do not like to discuss, such as politics. It has been a few months since I have recorded or released a show. I had to take a step away due to some personal work and financial and college-related reasons, but I am back and I am here to go. And with that being said, I have a very special guest for my first show back. He is someone who is a veteran in American politics. He is an author of numerous books, one of which is one of my favorite, Stone's Rules. He is my faux uncle. He is a friend to President Donald J. Trump. Please welcome Roger Stone. Roger, how are you today?
Alex, it's great to be back with you again, and it's great to see you back on the air.
Roger, it is great to have you back on my show. There's a lot that is going on as it relates to American politics, especially related to President Donald J. Trump. You and I both have been paying attention to his court cases that he has been experiencing and his gag orders that he has been experiencing. Please tell my audience about what is going on and your take on this whole situation.
Well, the fundamental problem here in New York City is there is no crime. In other words, even if Donald Trump actually did what he is accused of doing, which he vehemently denies, which is making entries into the books of his company to cover payments to Stormy Daniels, such an act would not be illegal. In other words, it would only be illegal if it covered up some additional crime. Now, as you probably know, the act of paying a woman in a settlement agreement to maintain her silence is not a crime. If it was, well, Bill Clinton paid Paula Jones $868,000, but no one ever charged him criminally. So this, even if Trump were guilty, is at best a business records case. That would be a civil case. Instead, they have bumped it up to be a felony because they're desperate to convict Donald Trump of something, anything, before the next election. It doesn't matter to them that even if he is convicted in New York, the conviction will be overturned on a number of bases, the first of which is, of course, the fact that the judge has an obvious bias. The judge gave a campaign contribution to Joe Biden's campaign in violation of the New York State canon of judicial ethics. The judge has a conflict of interest in that his adult daughter is a Democrat fundraising consultant who's raised as much as $95 million using this very case that her father's presiding over as the point of her solicitation. So I think the American people are seeing through this. What's interesting here this morning, of course, is the gag. It is very clear that the judge intends to jail Trump if he continues to defend himself. It is equally clear that Trump intends to continue to defend himself, perhaps in violation of the gag rule. So the lines are drawn. The judge was very clear yesterday morning when he threatened to jail Trump. Trump was very clear last night saying jail is a small price to pay for freedom of speech and the U.S. Constitution. I suspect we're going to have a crisis today.
I agree. I have this InfoWars article pulled up from last night, which you reposted on your X feed. And it says former President Donald Trump said he'd be willing to go to jail for violating an unconstitutional gag order, essentially daring the New York judge in his criminal trial to make the unprecedented move. Speaking to reporters following day 12 of his trial, the former president continued to bash his hush money case as politically motivated, a witch hunt meant to keep him off the campaign trail. And this is exactly what that is. Okay, they want him off the campaign trail, but I don't think they realize that they're giving him more and more publicity every single time that they do something like this. Roger, what say you?
It is completely and totally counterintuitive. In other words, normally speaking, a candidate for federal office gets indicted on a crime, any crime, their money dries up, their support dries up. Pretty soon they're out of the race. The attempts at lawfare, the so-called documents case in Florida, the January 6th case in Washington, the valuations case, which was particularly outrageous, where Trump put up collateral to borrow money with banks. The banks conducted their own appraisal of that collateral. They elected to make the loans. They made very handsome interest. They made $40 million on their money. They got paid back in full. Where is the crime? Who benefited? It didn't matter what Trump claimed the assets he put up as collateral were worth. It only matters what the bank's own independent appraisal showed. So people saw through that case, realized there was no crime there. That began this trend. Now, this case, which appears to be falling apart on the government, is being seen yet again as harassment and clear election interference. Here would be my prediction. If the judge does incarcerate Trump today, even if he sends him to jail for a day or 2 days, Trump will skyrocket in the polls as never before. Now, I don't know how they handle the fact that by law, the president must have Secret Service attention as a former president at all times. But I don't think this judge fears incarcerating Trump, nor do I think Trump is afraid to go to jail. So we have today what could be a true historic crisis, which I think politically will benefit Trump.
It certainly will be interesting to see what happens and how this plays out. Roger, you've been, a victim of this lawfare that they've been doing against President Trump. What are some comparisons that you see between what they did to you and what they're doing to President Trump?
There's so many. First of all, I was, as you remember, completely gagged. In my case, the judge not only gagged me, but unconsciously gagged every member of my family, my wife, my daughter, my adult son, gagged a gag that was challenged immediately in the appeals court because it's unconstitutional. Gag orders are unconstitutional. This has never been tested. So I challenged my gag order. I appealed it to the DC Court of Appeals. It's a simple First Amendment issue. They sat on it for 9 months, taking no action. And then the day before my trial was to begin, they said that my motion to remove the gag order was not ripe because I had not yet asked the trial judge who put the gag on me to remove her, which of course she never would have done. Interestingly enough, the appeals court did void the gag on my wife, my daughter, my son, and my supporters. So it's very similar in that sense. We are both gagged. I moved for a move of venue out of DC. I realized I could not possibly get a fair trial in DC. I wanted to move it elsewhere. Denied. Trump tried to move his trial to a different jurisdiction than New York. Denied. Trump moved to recuse the judge based on the judge's contribution to Biden and his connections to his Democrat political consultant daughter, as well as some of his prejudicial comments. It was denied. I moved to recuse the judge after the judge praised the jury forewoman in my case after my conviction, only to learn that the jury forewoman, whose name was Tomika Hart, she outed herself, had said during jury selection, Alex, she was unfamiliar with the Russian collusion issue. She hadn't followed the case. She didn't really know who I was. This woman was a Democrat member, a Democrat candidate for Congress. And through all of 2019, she was attacking me and Donald Trump on social media, on both Twitter and Facebook. But she had those postings on a private setting And then after the trial, she tried to quietly delete them and she got caught. So Trump has the exact same kind of bias in his jury. He has jurors who have attacked him on social media, but then in the next breath say under oath, oh, but I can be impartial. I hate Trump, but I can be objective. I can be impartial. It's a conundrum, to say the least.
Do you even think it's possible at this point to have an impartial jury for President Donald Trump?
It certainly is in parts of the country, but not in Manhattan. Manhattan, New York, has to be one of the most liberal enclaves in the country, other than perhaps downtown San Francisco. I can't think of a more liberal jurisdiction. We're talking about 15% Republican registration in Manhattan. Uh, Looking at some of these jurors, looking at the profile of the jurors, remember, we're not by law allowed to know the jurors' names, and we don't want to know their names, but we do know that I think every single juror reports getting their news from the New York Times. Almost every juror admits to watching CNN or MSNBC. Uh, I don't get my news from MSNBC from the same reason I don't eat out of the toilet. And if that is where you're getting your news, well, then chances are overwhelming that you're a liberal and a Trump hater.
I want to take a lateral, still, related to President Trump, but not his court cases. It's coming up time where he needs to, make his decision for vice president. Who do you think that should be?
Well, now you're asking my opinion as opposed to his opinion. First of all, I don't think the president's anywhere near a decision. He has mentioned a few names, but I don't think there is a secret short list. And if there is a secret short list, well, he hasn't shared it with me. I upset a lot of conservatives when I say this. Or I should say a lot of Republicans, but my first choice would be Tulsi Gabbard. I think that she brings you some new votes. She's a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. She's a combat veteran of both Kuwait and Iraq, where she served with distinction. She's a championship surfer. She is a former Democrat member of Congress. She's a former vice chairman of the Democratic National Committee. These are positives, not negatives, because she can make an articulate case as to why she left the Democratic Party. By the way, we need Democratic votes to win this election. We have to win some Democrats. So, look, she's anti-war in Ukraine. She wants to seal our southern border. She's pro-life, and she is now and has been for I think 5 or 6 years, strongly pro Second Amendment. Last time I talked to her, she was actually at a shooting range because I could hear the guns being fired in the background. So, yes, I think we need someone who brings something to the ticket, but who at the same time is on the big key issues, is copacetic with Trump, but who also is sure-footed, who has the experience to go through a national campaign without making mistakes. You may remember her debate with Kamala Harris for the Democratic nomination, where she destroyed her, just destroyed her. So I think Tulsi Gabbard has the necessary toughness to be vice president. By the way, I think it is unlikely, but not impossible, that she will be chosen. I also like Devin Nunes, a name you don't hear much, but here's a guy who's been tested by fire. Here's a guy who went through the heat of the Russian collusion hoax battle, and he stood tall. He was a dairy farmer before he was elected to Congress, 20 years in Congress without ever becoming part of the Republican establishment, maintaining his independence. A solid, absolutely loyal to President Trump, an America First Republican, low key, because you don't want the vice presidential candidate upstaging the candidate for president. I think that and he's a Californian. I think he's potentially ideal. Alex, Richard Nixon once told me that in looking for a Democratic, looking for a vice presidential running mate, don't look for someone who can help you. Just find someone who does not hurt you. That may be a little skeptical, but by that criteria, Dr. Ben Carson would certainly fill the bill. Other names I've heard are Senator Marco Rubio. And while I like him personally, his politics are not mine. While I like him personally, I do think the 12th Amendment of the Constitution is a problem because as you know, it essentially it doesn't prohibit, but it penalizes you if the candidate for president and vice president are legal residents of the same state. So while there may be some clever legal ways around that, I think many in the base would be upset with a Rubio selection. Many of our friends would be unhappy with that. The other candidate's name you keep hearing is J.D. Vance. He's a good man, a very good man, but only 2 years in the Senate, no managerial or government or business experience. Before that, he was a popular novelist. I think he could be president someday, but I don't think he is ready to be president today. And therefore, the search goes on.
It is all intriguing, it's all interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing who President Trump picks. Roger, I want to help you out. Guys, if you go to mypillow.com and use promo code STONE, it helps Roger out. He's still dealing with a lot of legal issues, a lot of legal bills, so please help him out by using promo code STONE to help Roger out with that. Also, go and purchase some of his books. I have two of them right in front of me. I have The Man Who Killed Kennedy, and I have Stone's Rules. They are two amazing books, great insights from a man who has been through it all. So please help Roger Stone out. Roger, aside from those things, where else can people find you?
Well, the first thing I would tell people is go to stonezone.com, stonezone.com. And from there, you can find everything. You can find my daily show, The Stone Zone, which is on rumble.com/RogerStone. You can also find my 77 WABC radio show in New York every weekend, which you can hear worldwide by going to WABCradio.com. You can also go to the store there, and as you point out, you can get your copy of Stone's Rules, my rules of life, kind of like Sun Tzu's The Art of War or Machiavelli's The Prince. It has a great introduction by my friend Tucker Carlson. It's a funny book. It's not dry, but it doesn't matter whether you're in retail or whether you're in tech or whether you're in agriculture. It doesn't matter what your avocation may be. I think there are rules in this book that can help your career. Again, stonezone.com. Check out the shop when you are there. But that's the best place to go to find all things Roger Stone.
Roger, thank you so much for coming on my show, and I'm looking forward to having you back on again soon. Thank you all so much for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe to this show. It helps me out a lot. And then go use promo code STONE to help Roger out. Thank you all so much for listening. God bless you all, and goodbye.